Afternoon, everybody. My name is Sherry Donaldson. I work with Harambee, and I was responsible for project that was funded by the UK government in South Africa, the Harambee's IRM, which is Installation, Repair and Maintenance Program. Really, what we were trying to do is address some of the challenges of youth unemployment in South Africa. If you look at the barriers to work, the lack of skills that enable young people to gain work, opportunities for work, the lack of the right skills, the lack of the opportunity, the lack of access to those opportunities, and then particularly the lack of gender inclusion in the artisanal skills areas. In South Africa, particularly, training of artisans is really, really expensive, and it's a long-term project. An artisan apprenticeship can take anything from 3 to 5 years, and you're paying candidates stipends while they're in the workplace, plus you've got the training portion. So, as I said, it's a long-term project. A lot of the artisan training programs in South Africa are fully funded, and employers don't contribute to those programs. And because of that, what we find is that they're less likely to employ candidates at the end of the program, because it's really easy for them to get a free resource at the end of the 3 to 5 years. Additionally, businesses report that the skills that the apprentices are taught don't match those which they need in the workplace, and that candidates aren't ready, especially these technical candidates, are not ready for the work of world. And then we do have some long-term tracer studies in the country, but there's a lack of clarity around the absorption from artisan programs into employment. So we were looking at all of these things when we were designing our program in collaboration with the UK government. So we had a few key principles in our funded program, and one was to partner with an industry body for a few reasons. One, because skilling programs need to have demand identified up front. And in this specific program, we wanted that to be a very clear mandate for our delivery partners. We also wanted to make sure that we were skilling and training young people for what business was actually asking for. So that was another key requirement, another key principle in partnering with the industry body. And we decided to focus on plumbing because they have a very well-organized, well-structured, effective industry body. So it was a great learning space for us. All of the programs that we ran had to incorporate Ready to Work for young people who weren't already in the workplace. And in the apprenticeship program, I mentioned earlier about the funding, the employers have to contribute towards the candidate stipends. And in the Blue Lever apprenticeship program, employers fund the candidate stipends 100% while they're in the workplace. Blue Lever sourced other funding for the other elements of the program, but while they're in the workplace, the employer is paying for that. And then we also did independent surveys to try and understand the program impact. So we had 5 key elements in the technical skills space, working with 3 key partners. I already mentioned IOPSA, which is the industry body. They actually ran some of the training programs for us as well. We partnered with Blue Lever Education, who were a new startup in the artisan training space, but we loved their model and wanted to test some theories of change in their space. And then with an organization called the National Business Initiative, the NBI, which has a different approach to technical skills training, training very entry-level skills in something called an artisan hand, so not even a plumbing assistant, it's below that. So a plumbing assistant, a plumbing hand, a general repairer hand, which is an accredited learning program, 3 months of technical skill and 6 months of 6 months of work experience, following which the candidates go through a summative assessment and they get a skill, which that program then puts them on an articulation of learning or ladder of learning that they can work towards getting an apprenticeship over the long term, but it gets them into the workplace quickly. Using those 3 delivery partners, we ran an artisan recognition of prior learning program. That's where we took people with existing technical skills and put them through the formal plumbing qualification. We ran the MBI skills program, which I've just spoken about, the Blue Lever apprenticeship program, and our first cohort has actually just entered their 3rd year of the apprenticeship program. they call Leadership Base Camp, which I kind of talk about as ready to work on steroids, which was another reason why we really wanted to test programs with them. And then Artisan Academy, which is a support program for existing artisan businesses, helping them to improve their businesses, become more sustainable, but also helping them become more compliant. And then the last program was also run by OPSA, so the ARPL and the solar and heat pump qualifications were run by the industry body. And that was taking existing qualified trade-tested plumbers and giving them an additional qualification in the green economy. So we ran all of those programs, and there were a lot of insights. I mean, this is just a summary of those insights, but really the initial results show that the program had the desired impact, which was increasing the ability of young people on the various programs to earn more, whether that was via self-employment or via formal employment, but it definitely had that impact. And in fact, even those that did Blue Leavers Leadership Base Camp that didn't make it into the apprenticeship program had access to more opportunities for work and for earning than those that didn't go through the program at all. The Leadership Base Camp, as I said, is like Ready to Work. NBI in their program also incorporated Ready to Work, and that can have a substantial impact. And there's other programs in South Africa that have run where even after young people have finished apprenticeship program between 3 and 5 years, they weren't absorbed, and the feedback that the training providers got and the funders got was that they weren't ready to work and they didn't understand the world of work. So we think that in the technical skills space is really, really key. In IRM, I think we know this intrinsically, but small businesses can create many opportunities for young people. And Artisan Academy, we don't have the formal results yet, but the provisional results from Blue Lever as the provider of the service of the program show that their businesses that go through that program on average employ 1.5 extra people following the program. So if you're running 30 businesses, if through the program, that's 45 new jobs. And in South Africa, every job counts. There were a lot of assumptions we made in our programs that I don't think we had clearly articulated, and that those need to be clearer upfront in the design of programs, but also that have impact on policy and funding. One of the big ones, for example, in normal programs in Harambee, we're very adamant as part of our inclusion process that people on the programs get stipends so that they can get to the training. We find big dropouts in South Africa, and a lot of that is because candidates don't have the money to get to the training opportunity. And there was an assumption in the ARPL program that everyone was employed, so they didn't need that training stipend, but actually that wasn't true. So I think that identifying and testing those key assumptions is really, really important upfront and during the program. We kicked off this project before COVID, and then COVID hit us. And so in a lot of instances, we moved to online studying, but there were also some big lessons and insights from that. In South Africa, barriers, the cost of data, but even if you have data, the lack of connectivity in a lot of places is a big barrier. Access to devices, our delivery partners actually gave young people on their program smartphones so they could connect, but not everybody had adequate devices, which obviously has implications as well. And in South Africa, in that space, you've got, in many instances, a lot of people sharing very small spaces. So the space to study, and then additionally perceptions of family and friends that were in that same home, that if you're on a device, you're not studying, you're playing, you're not working. Gender advocacy. We set quite ambitious targets for our delivery partners and for the Blue Lever Apprenticeship Program and the NBI program. We had a target of 50% female inclusion in a space where in an industry overall around the world that has approximately 3% of female inclusion in the plumbing space. And we thought we would have a supply problem, but we had more than sufficient young ladies applying for those opportunities. The biggest challenge came when we had to find workplaces for those young women. And I think in the project overall, we really underestimated the need for gender advocacy, and how much harder that had to take. But interestingly, we have just launched a new program called Women on Tools, which is talking about how when young women are in those workplaces, the impact that they're having on those workplaces. And we found that across both NBI and Blue Lever, that young women really showed up well and showed the young men how to do it. And really, we've had a lot of employers come back saying, we'll take another woman into our apprenticeship program. And that's been like one of the most amazing insights from our side. But additionally, gender inclusion also has funding implications. That advocacy takes extra people. The need to support young people in the programs takes extra people, takes extra program management. Additionally, we also implemented a maternity leave policy for apprentices, and there's additional costs that are incurred if a young lady has to come back after maternity leave. They have to catch up. How and where do they do that? There's online learning, that's an option, but the simulated practicals have to be caught up. And for young ladies to come back into the program, and they come back in and may not be finished by the time the funding windows have closed. So that also has implications as well. I think also a huge thing that we found is having the employer buy-in was important, but additionally having the industry support and industry buy-in made such a big difference in this particular program. We did Jessie training across all candidates on the program, but once the industry body came on board and started supporting the maternity leave policy, supporting the gender inclusion in their space, they went on an active campaign to relook at their documents, to relook at their learning material, to make sure that they were being inclusive. And that started driving, I think, a lot of the change in the industry.